We're just going to introduce ourselves, and I'll start off. My name is Richard Randolph. I'm the founder and director of the Science and Spirituality Institute.
Hi, I'm Morgan Price. I am a part of the Science and Spirituality Institute, and I also have a background in biochemistry.
I'm Maurice Godfrey. I'm a professor at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I'm a molecular biologist and geneticist by training, but I've been doing educational outreach to various underrepresented communities with a strong emphasis on Native communities in the Great Plains.
Hi, I'm Marnie Gelbart. Like Maurice, I'm a molecular biologist and geneticist by training, and now I'm full-time director of programs at the Personal Genetics Education and Dialogue program in the Department of Genetics at Harvard Medical School.
Osio. Good afternoon. I'm Regina Ilawate. I'm an associate professor in health promotion in the College of Public Health at University of Nebraska Medical Center, where I also get to serve as director of spirituality, culture, and health, and co-director of community outreach and engagement.
I'm Jeremy Fricke. I'm focused on religious diversity and an expert on interfaith engagement. And I currently serve as Vice President of Mission Advancement at Tri-Faith Initiative.
I'm Steve Carson. I'm Professor Emeritus of Pathology, Microbiology, and Immunology at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I've been trained in biochemistry and genetics, but I've worked in diverse fields, including biophysics and virology. So I'm really not an expert of much. And I'm just here kind of as an observer.
And I'm Dale Ratchford. I'm the manager of service and spiritual engagement at Nebraska Medicine. I am a clinical pastoral education supervisor for Capstone University, which is part of the Spiritual Care Association. And I'm a theologian and an ethicist.
So we've just completed a day-long conference entitled Genetics and Spirituality, Conversations at the Nexus of Science and Faith. I thought it was a powerful conference. We had a tremendous lineup of speakers and just tremendous, I would say, just a sense of community that was there. It was a very diverse group. We had a number of different religious traditions represented, as well as different spiritualities, and so it was a very rich dialogue, I thought. The thing that struck me the most about the day was, what I'll say was the thirst, the interest in just having a conversation about science and spirituality. People were really excited to just be able to be around the table in a room with others who share an interest, a passion for relating science and spirituality. I thought that as the day went on, we developed a really excited, passionate community with some shared values and definitely some shared interest. And so for me, as the founder of a new science and spirituality organization, it was just really encouraging to see how excited people were for what our vision is at Science and Spirituality Institute and what we hope to accomplish. So for me, that was the biggest takeaway. It was just the encouragement that I sensed from everyone who was there, and just the encouragement to continue to do what we did for today.
I guess for me, the biggest takeaway, besides just feeling incredibly privileged to be in a room and be a part of that, would be the willingness and the eagerness of people to keep this moving forward and not just have this conference be the end of it, which I think is the biggest part for me, is like wanting not only to discuss this amongst people that while we have very wildly different backgrounds, whether in the science area or the spirituality area, we all agreed pretty much on one thing, and that was that this is an important topic that is not only valid, but that there is an intersection. And so I'm just really excited to see where it goes.
I too enjoyed the entire day. There was a lot of energy. It was a lot of positivity. But I go back to think about asking people to be part of this. And once flyers were sent out or you were looking for attendees, those are people from the community, generally the communities of faith, who would find this of interest. What was remarkable to me is from the scientific side and the medical side, is that every single person who was asked, who was in town, which was everyone but one, said absolutely yes, and they came. So it shows me that not only is there maybe this hunger or this desire from the community at large, the faith community at large, but there might be a similar desire from the scientific community to be part of this, because they didn't shy away, they didn't say no, they wanted and expressed that notion. So I think that's a very positive thing that could expand as future conferences, whether they're here or elsewhere, you could think about.
There was a lot of connection, and I feel like this is a moment where we need connection, and it fuels us, like, regardless of what kind of professional background we're coming from. I was struck by the way that the word expertise has been used in this conversation and during the conference, because, expertise is something that I've grappled with a lot, and moving from a bench scientist, where I may have been the world's, only holder of a very precise piece of knowledge, but ultimately recognizing that to actually know much less about the science, but to have, ways just to engage with people and really, I think, like, curiosity about what other people have to say. I want to redefine that word, because I actually think people who embrace the breadth and can hold that and make sure that the conversations aren't always going into a really reductionist space, I think that's a tremendous expertise, maybe wisdom. I guess another reflection is that the way that in the room we held complexity, and I could feel it in my body, of the magnitude of the issues that we're talking about, and to hear people in the room voicing deeply held spiritual convictions, personal experiences, the tensions, challenging language about how we talk about, is it modern genetics, what is really much older wisdom and exploration of the world. I just felt like we held a lot there, and we didn't get reduced into the binaries that I think, genetics as a field in some ways is set up around those binaries as a way, culturally, at least. I was really, the last thing I say is I was really drawn to what Regina and Crystal had to say about that there are no boundaries. And when we look at things for the whole and not try to partition it, maybe that's where, to me, the answers come from.
I love that. And that's what I felt that too. I felt that it was amazing how we all managed to dance around definitions, even. Like, we never even defined spirituality. Think about that. And how we were all able to find a sense of community, a sense of common ground, like shared language, without having to define it, to make these connections. And I think it's interesting that expertise came up for you, because I think it's really beautiful how we all came into the room with different lived experiences, different areas of expertise, different traditions, and I think it's kind of fun. Crystal and I got to share, had a little bit of a different place, because it isn't faith-based perspective, right? It was more of cultural perspectives or traditions, and I think that also creates a little more space for all of us within that, and I really appreciate that too. I really appreciated just being able to be a part of this, and honestly, I just felt like in awe of the expertise in the room, and so humbled and so grateful, and I learned so much, and the questions that were asked, up until the very, end, it was just like the questions were so deep, and it was so, I really felt like it was meaningful to everyone in the room in ways that it, and like we were all in the right place at the right time and shared and heard what we needed to. And I agree with you, Richard, that this is and Morgan, that we're moving this forward. I think there's a lot of work to be done among us between now and the next conference, because there will be a next one, no matter how tired we all are. And I'm excited about that, and just finding those areas that we can work together, and all of those intersections, that are what kept us all talking for an entire day without getting too tired to even continue talking now. I'll pass it from here.
So I'll echo some of what I've heard from some fellows here, that it's very meaningful to see so many people from different walks of life come together to have a discussion around genetics and spirituality, right? It's not, I don't even know if there even has been another conference on this topic. It's a question that I have, but to my knowledge, no. But I also agree that science and religion, science and spirituality, however we want to name those pieces, has a huge opportunity to be able to bring people together from different religious and spiritual and traditional walks of life.
Yeah, one of the questions that we just were talking about was how to get people of different religions into a conversation. And I think today's meeting is a perfect answer to that question, because Dr. Tsotsi and Dr. Ahmad both pointed out that science belongs to everybody. And at some point, everybody does science. Even people who are theologians ask questions and look for answers. So today, the topic was science. It wasn't religion, and everybody participated. And in my own life, I found I can talk with people from any religion, particularly if we don't talk about religion. We talk about things we have in common. And that's what we did today, and we got multiple perspectives on that common experience and the common questions. And we also involved the question of spirituality from a non-judgmental position. And I think if we keep doing that, you can do it on science, you can do it on cooking, you can do it on whatever you want to do, and you can have these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, Steve, I want to echo that. We transcended the religious, conversation to a deeply spiritual conversation, which is what this is about, science and spirituality. And what I loved, what I really saw today, was how we could take theoretical things, right? Very academic, very scientific, very, very minute, issues that have, and put them into this very messy kind of mix with the human narrative, right? And see, how does this actually interact with the human experience, with actual people in actual circumstances who are going through actual pain and suffering. And I think that's where the intersection of science and spirituality really is essential, right? It's not only nice to have, I think it's actually the essential thing of what makes us go forward, is to have that dialogue. And it transcends the religion. We can sometimes frame our spirituality through religious experience through doctrine and dogma and all those things. But for many of us, we filter our spiritual experience through how we experience God in the moment, how we experience God through other people, through nature, through all those things, and then it filters through our faith, right? And so the religious part of it is not nearly as important as, do I value other human beings, right? Do I respect them, right? Do I hear them? Do I see them? Do I really acknowledge who they are? Do I understand that they have had suffering and pain that lasted long before I ever got here, right? And that we all bring suffering and pain to that. And I think that's what I found beautiful about this particular conference is I was expecting the surprise for me, Richard, was I was expecting almost purely an academic exercise. And what I got out of it was a deeply spiritual exercise. And so that was just really encouraging for me.
I want to say to your comment, Dale, that I'm so glad you said that because that's what we were trying to do. That's the goal, was the goal of this conference. I think from the beginning among the 6 organizers, certainly it's my vision for where Science and Spirituality Institute needs to go. And so I'm just really appreciate that observation. Thank you.
As I was thinking of the things as you were speaking, Dale, I'm thinking about the people who were in the room and a lot of the questions that were asked, not only by the attendees, but even asked by the panelists as they were going through their experiences. And I think that's something that when people walked out, they didn't walk out with answers, but they walked out with, we have to have more conversations, to ask more questions, so someday we can have some answers.
And Dale, as I listen to you and I'm reflecting on the day, I think we all just came together in being human. And that's really where it rests for me. It's in that humanity that connected us all. And I think that as the day progressed, I think it was interesting because you brought up the expectation that it would be really academic and it would be really theoretical. And I think it did, when we were laying the groundwork in the beginning, I think it started that way. Like we're sharing worldviews and paradigms and perspectives and theories and typologies, right? And then it was like it built so beautifully from one person to the next. And I think it became incrementally more and more and more human till the very end when it was like there's nothing left but our humanity in this. And we were all in that together.
And it wasn't lost on me that this event was held at the Munroe-Meyer Institute, which is built and founded on the very principles of giving the best possible life to all people, all kids, right, that were born with differences, right? And that was in my heart and in my head all day long as I was getting ready to speak or as I was listening to other people and going, everybody in this building has value and has beauty and has a story and has a narrative. And what we're talking about here today has real life implications for the kids that are walking in the front door of this institute. Yeah. And that was not lost on me. And I just thought it was absolutely profound, absolutely profound. And thank you for hosting us. Yes.
As I'm listening and hear the word common ground, and I often, at PG Ed we talk about, DNA is a common thread, and conversations about DNA, and I would never, ever have thought this. I came very much from my postdoc in a cerebral space, but that ultimately it's not, it's good. Understandings of the science can help people as they navigate their personal decisions, but it's much more about just how we it's an exploration of ourselves of our relationships to each other, to the earth, and it just has this way. When we, and I forget who, maybe Maurice, you're talking about the dialogue of people wanting to come back, and that, often, and I sit in science spaces where people are like, well, but like, what is the outcome, right? Right, Grant, what is the outcome? And, I think the conversation is so much of a driver of change in ways that I don't have a measurement for it, but I sure felt it, and I think other people did too, that I can't say exactly where it will go, but I think we were all changed, and we are all people who can make change in our own corners, and so we bring that with us, and that's something I wish, more people could experience. Yeah. I think once you experience it, I think you quest for that in life, spaces where you can engage with people at that level.
I think that maybe we should just talk a little bit about the second question, which Jeremy's already talked about in terms of how dialogue between science and spirituality can be a vehicle for promoting and nurturing interreligious dialogue. So I have this conviction that science and spirituality, the dialogue between science and spirituality, can be a vehicle for promoting and nurturing more interreligious dialogue where we talk with one another, we share with one another from different religions, different spiritual perspectives, and then we help one another grow. And I'm convinced of that because I've been in those discussions and witnessed it happening, so I know that it can happen. When I think about interreligious dialogue, I think about Mahatma Gandhi in India, who was a Hindu. He, of course, led the movement for India to gain its independence from Great Britain, and it was a movement of nonviolence that was shaped very much by his readings, him reading about the teachings of Christ. So we have a Hindu reading the teachings of Christ, and in my opinion, becoming a more faithful Hindu, right? Not a Christian, a more faithful Hindu. And then you fast forward some more years after that, and then in Boston, you have Martin Luther King Jr. reading Gandhi, and then developing his vision for peaceful civil disobedience. So you have Gandhi learning from Christ, and then teaching Martin Luther King a Hindu teaching a Christian how to be a better Christian. So for me, that's what interreligious dialogue, that's the whole point. So as long as I'm a director at Science and Spirituality Institute, that's going to be one of my convictions that can and must happen. And I thought in the conversation today, there was that moment which I thought was just so powerful in the third panel when Howard Gendelman, a Jew, got into a dialogue with Kevin Fitzgerald, a Catholic Jesuit, and the back and forth, but also the respect that they had for one another was, for me, a really powerful moment in the day, but also sort of the model of what I think can happen moving forward.
Just to kind of go off of that and thinking about why it's so important to have these discussions, I think it gives a basis of language to build from, which is what I really liked off of Gina and Dr. Ciotti, and their definitions and their explanation of it, and relating it back to, and what I was doing in my head at least, of relating it back to what I know and how I think about it, and that shared definition, or not even just a shared definition, but looking at, okay, so that's their definition, what's my definition, what's different, what's the same, and how does that help us move forward. And I think building that library of definitions and that language around talking about spirituality and science is going to help move everybody forward, and trying to take that off the ground as well.
One of the things that you were saying, Richard, it also reminded me of Martin Luther King Jr. then took his work, won the Nobel Peace Prize, and then the following year nominated Thich Nhat Hanh, a Buddhist monk who protested the Vietnam War, which is what Martin Luther King Jr. was also doing at that time. And it united them in that thing. So you have a Hindu tradition influencing a Baptist minister who influenced a Zen Buddhist monk. And what was the common thread is justice, right? Justice. And I think that's what we're trying to do here as well, is in our own way, trying to create a space around a very difficult issue to understand, but also a difficult issue in terms of the controversies surrounding it, maybe misinformation around it, miseducation around it, but also trying to put it down to the common threads. What is it that we're really worried about, so that we can ensure that whatever ends up happening happens with a sense of justice for everyone that has access to it, right? And that everyone, if it is beneficial, does have access to it. And I think that to me is what really makes having these kind of interfaith dialogues, because we are not monolithic in this, to Jeremy's point, right? It's not just adjacent to one particular tradition of faith. It's adjacent to all of us as humans. And so we have to figure out how to do that in a way that makes sense. So without this, we can't do that.
So just one other thing that I'm thinking about hearing all of this is how powerful science is as a topic to be a total path between two people of different religious backgrounds. So what I mean by that is I've heard, concerns about starting with religion when having discussions with someone from a different religious background. Science does allow us to start with some basic assumptions, but also not avoid getting to the conversation around religious, spiritual, traditional difference, because we can get to very difficult issues, right? It's not totally bypassing it. It's not just talking about, what food do you cook for this holiday or whatever. It's about getting to something very, very deep, and especially when we're talking about genetics. So I do believe that we can see some overlap with this. Whenever people learn together about something that isn't each other, and then have an opportunity to discuss it, we tend to see more positive relationships. There's some studies out there by Public Religion Research Institute, for example, that shows that people who have interfaith relationships at work have stronger connections than if they have interfaith relationships in their family or whatever else. And I personally lift that up to be, well, they're able to agree on some common things, by working together that lead to the ability to have more difficult conversations with each other.
It's like that coming together in shared purpose or shared meaning. It's like we can all get there through whatever path we're on, through, from coming from whatever place we come from and being whoever we are and knowing whatever we know. But we're all coming together in that shared purpose. Yeah. Yeah, and it is deeply human. I did hear that theme of justice throughout the day, and I also heard a theme of equity throughout the day. And it's interesting because I think as we all sit around this circle and reflect on that, what's surfacing for me is another theme of freedom or independence or sovereignty and autonomy to be able to even bring ourselves down that path to meet in that purpose.